I genuinely hate rabbit holes. And what I mean by rabbit holes is that you think of something and then you research it and then the next thing you know you're continuing down that path and then you're in a rabbit hole. So, um before I continue, I just want to give a full disclaimer that what I'm going to say on here is going to be pretty graphic and if you have a weak stomach, if you don't, because this is something that's not talked about every day, or at least to this gravitation. So, fair warning, I said. All right. So, um, first off, my power's back on, so that's good. Um, I was scrolling on Facebook, and this is where the rabbit hole started. So the rabbit hole started where I saw this reel where it says that there's 4 to 5 uh places to visit, and the list was Mexico, Morocco, France, Thailand, um Kenya, and I think Singapore too. So I think that's 6. And out of those lists, it was a rating, and Morocco had a rating of the safest places to visit, 9 out of 10. So in my head, I'm thinking like, that's a lie because a safe place for anyone to visit would be Japan, um, or Singapore, because Singapore, their police, they don't play that. You know, like I'm not kidding. I am not kidding. If you don't believe me, you could look it up on YouTube. You could ask one another, and they'll tell you the police there will literally beat you with a stick if you break the law. And people don't want that. I think people would rather get Swiss cheese instead of having their skin fall off from a beating. So so Singapore I could see safe. Japan, you could literally leave whatever it is on the ground and someone would go out of their way. They'll make it a quest to find you and return your property. So you know, uh, Japan and Singapore, I would say, are relatively safe. But when I saw that Morocco was on there, I was like, no, that's far from the truth. Anywhere and everywhere you go in the world, there's going to be some negative or bad parts about it. I'm just going off from what I see. From what I see is people that don't practice Christianity, and the people that don't practice Christianity and they convince you to join their faith, their religion, those very people are the one that says that their religion their faith is peace, and it promotes this, it promotes that. Yet they leave their women in subjugation, and they make them cover themselves in a whole entire bit, cabana caboodle. They're also the ones that are very crafty with making things go boom. And as they get a hold of you, they say Allahu Akbar as they're removing your head from your shoulder, from your body. So places like that who practice that kind of peaceful religion, they're the ones who target people that essentially don't follow their faith, especially if you are Western as in American, Scandinavian, blonde hair, even brunette. In 2018, there were two women. They are friends. They were friends, and they went hiking in Morocco. And this is where the rabbit hole started, because as people were scrolling, as I was scrolling and trying to see the comments, and people were like, "Oh yeah, I went to Morocco, and I thought it was going to be a nice place, but I kept getting, touched, and people were whistling at my 9-year-old daughter, and it was to the point where we have to go back to the ship for safety." And in my head, I'm thinking, like, what did you expect? Because the women in well-developed civilizations such as America, Canada, England, maybe Mexico, and that's a big maybe, and most of Europe, for the most part, because you do have your degenerates out there, unfortunately, but for the most part, compared to other countries like Afghanistan, like Pakistan, like Morocco, like Kenya, like the Philippines, like Thailand, like Syria, all those places, women don't have the same freedom of speech or freedom period to say what they want, to think how they want to think, and do what they want as the women here, especially in America and in England, has. So, with that being said, it's like, you go over to these other places and you expect other countries to respect you as if you were on your own homeland. It doesn't work like that. You're in their territory. Unfortunately, when you go to someone else's house, they do what they want in their house. It's up to you if you want to stay in that house or leave, but you chose to go to that house, therefore you should expect the host to treat you how they would host other people. So as I keep reading, this one guy posted a photo of Maren Uland and Louisa Jespersen. One was from Denmark. The other one was from Norway, I believe. But they were friends, and they both traveled to Morocco to go on a hike. Sorry, give me a second. All right. All right. These two women, they are the poster child of what other people that are dark skinned or brown skinned would see what a white woman is. When people think of white women, they think of blonde hair, blue eyes, or blonde hair at the very least, with nice teeth. And Marin and Louisa definitely fit that description to a whole entire T. And these women went to Morocco to go on a hike, only to be intercepted and had things done to them against their own free will and accord. Bounded, tied up. After things were done to them, to put the cherry on top, these men remove the head from their body and recorded the incident and sent it to this happened in 2018, when ISIS was like peak, when ISIS was like, I guess, a huge menace to society, literally society, all society. And as I'm seeing this video and I'm watching these comments, because that's how I got into the rabbit hole. And there has been times in the past where I see videos of various people getting their heads removed from their body. People from Brazil, a lot from Mexico, and mostly the Middle East, and on occasion, um you know it was purely accidental, on a extremely fatal accident, that their heads were removed. But for the most part, it was forcibly removed by a third party. And when I see the comments, they're they're pretty messed up. They're like, oh yeah, he deserved it, she deserved it, whatever, whatever. You know, and I'm thinking like, man, this is heartless. And then, like, you know, there are times when I accidentally fall into the rabbit hole again, and I go back to those videos, and then, you know, it stated that, these men and women that had their heads removed, they were involved in gang activity. So I see, not that it's justified, but um, I see why it was done. Now, when it comes to Marin and Louisa, when I saw the comments on that video, when um, their heads got removed, it was it was pretty um I guess I was relieved to see that people were remorseful, because they definitely didn't deserve it, because they all they were doing was just hanging out with each other and going on a vacation. I don't know why people, anyways, they were going on a vacation, and they just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And you know the comments were pretty sympathetic, and I hate to say, I mean, it did restore my faith in humanity just a little bit, you know um but still, like, they definitely didn't deserve it. And what makes me a little bit confused and upset is that not only because people in well-developed countries like America, for example, which is the biggest and huge example that I could think of, there's a sense of entitlement. The entitlement is that I can do and say whatever I want and go to any other country and expect to do the same, or somewhat the same. Places like Dubai, for what it's worth, it is a developed country, but it still has its restrictions. Like, it still has its restrictions, and it's far from the freedom that we have here in America, or the UK, or any other Western civilization that has the values of, like, America or England. So what baffles me is that these women think, like, because if something happens to a woman here in America, they will call the police, and the police would, whether there's actual factual proof or not, whether it's true or not, the police will act like a white knight in shining armor to protect these women and do whatever they think is necessary to keep them safe. So the women here in America know that. So they have this sense of entitlement, and it's not a bad entitlement, but it's like an out of sight, out of mind thing. So when they go to places like Dubai and wear something revealing and thinking that they're not going to get in trouble, joke's on you, you know, and then they're like, this is outrageous, and here in America, they complain about, equal rights this and equal rights that and equal pay this and equal pay that. And, I can't walk, I feel unsafe walking into town. And, like, you feel unsafe in your own country, but you go out of your way to go to places like Mexico, the DR, Colombia, Morocco, Morocco, you know, and you feel safer there than your own country. But there's literally two innocent women, you know, that met their end because at the time in 2018, one was 24 and the other one was 28. In 2018, I was 28. So think about that. You know, as you walk around in life, and you know you're thinking like, well, in 5 years, this is where I would like to be. I would like to travel. I would like to have a home, and get married and have kids and have a wedding, and have a Labrador and all that stuff. Oh, that's my ship. Anyways, have a Labrador and all that stuff, and you go to a place where you didn't know that you were going to meet God a little earlier than expected. And I think Louisa and Marin, then they would have never thought, probably in a million years, that was going to happen to them, but it happens. And I go back to the comments on Facebook, and I'm seeing all these, likes, like most of the posts or the threads was like, yeah, it wasn't safe. I had to find out the hard way. But there was very few of them that said, yeah, I went to Morocco and nothing bad happened. Well, obviously, because like you were with a tour guide and all that stuff. But the moment you stray off by yourself, you're putting yourself in danger. you know and the women that did have bad experiences, you know they got lucky, and got themselves out of danger by straying away from the tour guide and all that stuff. And and the other portion is that they had kids and family with them, and you have grown men catcalling minors. And people are like, not everywhere is bad. Like, yes, I understand that everywhere you go is not completely bad, but some places are definitely worse than others to visit. you know as a man, I can travel to most places, but as a black man, I can't, because of my skin tone. As a man, I can travel to most places, but at the same time, as a Christian, or someone who's agnostic, where he believes in God, but you know doesn't throw the Bible at you, that for them, that's a red flag. And for that alone, you know they would try to unalive me simply because I don't believe in Islam. The fact that I'm even speaking about this right now, all it takes is for one person to find this video and bring it to their leader, and next thing you know, I could end up on the south of Texas, um, with a bunch of people who are somewhat paramilitarized and remove my head from my body because that's how they get down. And in action, and there's been an instance where that happened. You know, someone was talking smack to a certain group of people south of the border of Texas, and from America down to the south of the border, they had their head removed, and that's all she wrote. So so the freedom that you have here in America is that you could state your feelings and disagree with someone, even your own government, and not have a repercussion. But the thing is that you pull the same stunt in other countries where your freedom doesn't apply. And you know, it's very, like I said, you know, Marin and Louisa, they definitely didn't deserve it, but you know, at the same time, you know, I think they lacked the situational awareness. I'm sorry, but you know, they lack the situational awareness. You know, and you know, going back to the videos, um, people are sympathetic, and then this one guy was like, yeah, Islam preaches this, preaches that, and how come people are saying it's safe in the Middle East than it is in Europe, and another guy chimed in, was like, it is totally safer in Europe than it is in the Middle East, which is why you guys are flooding Europe in droves coming from the Middle East. So, in my head, I'm thinking like, well, he definitely has a point there, because, if wherever you're from is so great, why leave? Ironically speaking, about the border from the south of Texas. Um, with that being said, um, these girls are in heaven, even though it's been a long time, my prayer goes out to them and their families. And I did hear that the men responsible, there was 9, so there was like 2 of them that were in the video, but there was 9 of them altogether that were responsible. One of the guys, he deleted himself while he was in prison, and the other 2 that were noted were electrocuted. And as of today, the other 6 are still awaiting their fate. So justice is being served, but just not as fast enough, though. With that being said, I think people should really, they should just really, like understand like what's going on around them. They really should, you know. And before ISIS popped off, there was a bunch of African American men and women, traveling to the DR, and not returning home after the vacation. It turns out they were being poisoned. So, you know, um, there's people, I'm saying white women, that travel to India because they're hip and they're liberal and they want to experience the world, and they're earthly, and they don't see color and all that stuff. And everyone is nice, and then they go to India and they get fondled times two by a bunch of Indian men. You know, you have black people, men and women, that go to China, that go to South Korea, very developed place, you know, and sometimes Japan, and even knowing this, I still want to go to Japan. But you know, they go to these countries and, you know, expect to not have racial slurs thrown at them. But keep in mind, you know, like here in America and maybe England too, you know, people can't just throw a slur like that because it's frowned upon. But if you go anywhere else other than a Western civilization, you know, they'll throw it out there because they could simply do that and there's nothing that you could do about it. You know, so there's bad everywhere you go, but you have to do your research and have situational awareness so things could be avoided. You know, a guy that I know was dating this girl, and you know, I was sitting in on a conversation, and she was like, oh, you know, would you ever go to Mexico with me? And he was like, you know, why would I go there? And she's like, well, I speak Spanish, you know, I'll tell you the places where not to go. And it's like that doesn't matter, you know, like wherever you go, the fact that the fact that down there is pretty unstable, it could happen anywhere, whether you're in the resort, next to the resort, or you're adventurous and you live, you know, you live in the danger zone and you go far away from the resort. But oh man. And then he's like, you know, yeah, he'll go to Europe, you know, and she's like, why not? And he's like, well, because Europe is better. And it is. I mean, everyone knows that. If anyone has the if anyone has the whole entire money in the world where they could pay for food, travel expenses, and a whole entire nine, they would definitely choose Europe or Asia than going to the Middle East or anywhere South Central America. And that's truth be told. You know, um I speak that doesn't matter. I just think people, mainly mainly white women, because they're the ones who travel the most, you know. um and as far as the rabbit hole goes, you know, from watching the video of Marin and Louisa, there was a video of a 19-year-old mom with two kids. Then I saw the video of that. Then, you know, I saw a video of a woman clearly living in the Middle East, you know, doing some type of dance with around a bunch of other men, fully clothed, you know, hijab and everything. And after I saw that video, you know, at the end of the video, there was a note that said, you know, in the video, not on a comment, but in the video, at the end of the video, video, the comment said, to think liberals, I'm just a messenger. I think it, but I don't say it out loud because I don't want to offend anyone. People don't like the truth. People hate when you tell them the truth. I hate when people tell me the truth. I still want it, but I hate when people tell me the cold, hard truth. But sometimes it just has to be said. So the note said, to think liberals in the West claim we are all the same. Our culture is far superior to the Muslim culture for many reasons amongst many. That women are free to do things, go outside and socialize with lots of men without the minuscule threat of being unalived or graped, YouTube. That tragic woman was not even safe in her own kind wearing a headscarf. How unsafe does that make our beautiful girls and women with their hair, arms, legs, and often chest on show, walking around outside alone, their white skin and in field infidel. Their white skin and infidels status screaming whore to Muslim men. So what that's trying to say is that the women in the West, so mostly developed countries like America, where women could go out in their skirts, go to the clubs, socialize with men, get to mingle. And I'm not saying that, SA doesn't happen to them, because it does happen, but not as often as it would be if you were in the Middle East, for sure. It happens, but not as much as out there. So knowing that, women dress in this nice skimpy outfit, showing their tattoos, showing their bosoms, having their OnlyFans, having their Instagrams, having whatever modeling contract they have, showing their arms, showing their legs, literally could go outside and not think twice about something happening to them, where people in the Middle East, they have to wear some type of covering, even their whole face maybe. They can't have tattoos, they can't go club, they can't socialize with men, and still get betrayed by their own, even if they are modest, at an alarming rate. There is some truth to it. As much as you don't want to hear it, it's true. And it's not just liberals. It's it's all Western women. Black, white, people, women that come from Asia and born in America or raised in America, even women like Mia Khalifa, for example, Lebanon, Muslim country, coming to America, and she's literally getting blasted out by a bunch of men, you know, legit death threats to her, legitimate death threats to her for living her best life. And the fact that you had this freedom here and you go over there and expect nothing to happen to you is crazy work. It's wild. Yeah. Liberal and conservative women, all alike, black, white. I'm sorry, but especially the white women, they definitely they have more situational awareness. I said what I said, and I ain't taking it back.